Welcome in. My name's Ryan. I'll be your pilot. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button. If you've been here before, welcome back. I love having you here. Boys and girls, I go live every Monday for my live call-in show from 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock. So if you don't like what you hear in this video or any of the other videos I do, feel free to call in and let your voice be heard. But let's hop into our topic of the day, and that is our perfect mock off-season for the New York Jets. This is going to be focusing on going all in for a Super Bowl in 2024 while also building towards the future. We got a whole lot of stuff that we're going to get into, including salary cap space, cuts, free signs, free agents, and a 7-round mock draft. So I want to hop into that. Now, as far as our goals for this free agency, Joe Douglas, Robert Saleh, I think both guys are going to be coming back. They obviously put their careers, I guess, on the line, or they really committed to Aaron Rodgers, and I don't think Woody Johnson is going to can these two guys or Nathaniel Hackett before seeing what a full season of Aaron Rodgers with these two could really look like. So we're going to fix the offensive line first and foremost. We're going to get a high-end number 2 wide receiver. We're going to get a backup quarterback / make a decision on Zach Wilson. We'll go into all that. And then balance the all-in nature for next year while also keeping in mind the future. And I think that's really important because in a season that sort of did not go the way the Jets wanted to this year, and everyone's screaming at Douglas and Saleh, it's really easy, or it could be really easy, for Douglas to just say, screw it, I'm using all the draft picks, I'm using all the things, from future years and money, and we're going to put ourselves in cap hell in the future because I need to save my job. Well, I think we can do the all-in stuff while still setting us up for the future without having to, mortgage away a ton of things. So let's get right into it. First off, we got to check how much salary cap space we have. Right now, we're sitting around $36 million according to Over the Cap. As far as cuts go, we're going to make a few cuts to our roster. Dwayne Brown at left tackle, Whitehead, and Lawson. Those three are actually on expiring contracts by way of void. So we don't save any money by cutting them, but their contracts end at some point in February. So we're going to have some dead cap associated with them, but it's already allocated towards that $36 million. Uzama is going to get cut. I think it's time to move on from him. He's had far too many penalties, and he's really just not that good. I would like to see, or not that good anymore. I'd like to see Jeremy Ruckert get a lot more of his snaps. So we're going to cut him, save $5.3 million. And then Nick Bawden, fullback. We really have not used him the way I thought we were going to, and I think the roster spot is more valuable, but you only save $1 million. I mean, his contract's not huge, so if you wanted to keep him, this isn't going to break the bank. We'll have enough room for him one way or the other if you really wanted to keep him on there. As far as other players, there's some guys with some really big cap hits on our roster. 2 in particular, John Franklin Myers and CJ Mosley. Current cap hit for JFM, $16.4 million. Current cap hit for Mosley, $21.5 million. So a lot of money going their direction. But if you restructure both of these contracts, you can save 9.2 on John Franklin Myers and 10.5 on CJ Mosley. You would just be committing one additional year to them as far as 2024 and 2025, which I don't think is really the worst case scenario based on CJ's leadership, unless he really falls off a map. But I guess you kind of deal with that one extra year if you had to. But $21 million is far too much to have a cap hit for CJ Mosley for next year, I think. So you save new cap hit for John Franklin Myers, $6.8 million. New cap hit for CJ Mosley, $10.9 million. I really like JFM. He kind of got a bad rap right after signing his contract initially because he seemingly disappeared, but he's still a strong asset on this defensive line, and you're going to have to move him around as a little chess piece because I think we're going to have some guys sort of leave via free agency. Maybe someone like Solomon Thomas, someone like Al Woods could be going. So you want to keep some of your defensive versatility depth there without trying to slash salaries across the board. So now after making those cuts, the Jets are sitting at about $62 million. Pretty nice. I'm not going to lie. I didn't realize we were going to be able to get that low, but the Jets could even get lower than that. There is some extra money sitting around in both DJ Reed and Tyler Conklin. You could restructure their deals and save about $10.5 million. But for now, I'm going to keep their contracts the way they are because I think $62 million is a pretty good amount of money to play with. Before we get into the video, I want to take a moment to talk about a really important topic to me that I think is going to be really important to you guys as well, and that is our mental health. As men, and I know 98% of you guys are based on my channel analytics, it can be really tough to ask for the help that you need. It's not like walking in front of a mirror and seeing you're too fat or you're too skinny and you got to go hit the gym. it's very challenging to get the mental health that you need. And that's where the sponsor of today's video comes into play, BetterHelp. They have made it so convenient to get this conversation started. All you have to do is head over to their website or app, fill out the questionnaire, get matched with one of thousands of therapists within their network, a lot of times within 48 hours. And then if you don't like that therapist, you can switch at no additional cost to yourself. And on top of it, the scheduling side of things. I can tell you as someone with two brand new kids under 18 months old, time is at a premium for me. You can set up a phone call, you can set up a video chat, you can set up a messaging conference. It is so much easier and accessible to go through BetterHelp for all this sort of stuff. So if this is something that you guys think you would like to try out, BetterHelp has hooked us up with a 10% discount code off your first session. All you have to do is click in the link in the description down below. That's betterhelp.com/JetsTalk. Let's get the conversation started. Let's go and look at some of our own team. We got to decide who we want to bring back, who is worth coming back. These are our free agents as it stands right now. Now, this is per over the cap, so maybe some guys are already like released on here from like practice squad or something, but this is what they're claiming is our free agent list. I would like to bring back a select few of these guys. Connor McGovern, I think you can get him back for relatively cheap. Not that he's been overly crazy, but he's got some positional flexibility, both at guard and at center, and Rodgers did want to have McGovern as his center going into this year. So $1.9 million, if you bring him back on the same kind of contract, I think that makes a lot of sense. Chuck Clark, I really wanted to see what he had to offer. I would like to bring him back at safety. Bryce Huff, obviously want to bring him back and retain him. Javelin Guidry could use a little bit of a slot corner just in case Michael Carter II goes down. He's a restricted free agent, so you can hit him with the original round tender if you want to do that. And then on special teams, I want to bring back all the special teams guys. Zuerlein, Morstead, Hardy, all the guys have been awesome this entire year. I really like what our special teams are. Let's just copy and paste what it was last year and make it happen again. Now, as far as contracts go, let me go back to that other page real quick. So you'll notice I did not have us bringing back Mekhi Becton. I do not think Mekhi Becton is playing at a high enough level, nor do I trust his injury history for us to give him any type of contract, let alone the franchise tag. I think he's probably okay moving on from the Jets, and I think the Jets are probably okay moving on from him. I'm a little bummed you wind up missing out on Bryce Hall. I would have liked to have him as some depth. I don't think we're going to end up bringing him back. I wouldn't mind bringing back Solomon Thomas. I thought he's been pretty solid. And then Kenny Yeboah is a restricted free agent, so you could see them slap some sort of tag or try to bring him back in some capacity. But overall, these are really the main key guys that I think we should retain. Now, as far as contracts go, like I said, Connor McGovern, Chuck Clark, those guys are going to receive the same contracts they had this past year. Javelin Guidry gets the restricted free agent tender. That's a 1-year, $3 million deal. Zuerlein, Morstead, Hardy, all taking the same contract that they had going into this year. 2.6 for Zuerlein, 1.3 for Morstead, 2 for Justin Hardy. And then you get to Bryce Huff. This is a homegrown, undrafted free agent, elite edge rusher from a pressure perspective. You cannot let this guy walk out the door. He is absolutely our most critical free agent coming up this offseason. So I want to hit him with the franchise tag. The $17.4 million is the one I would feel the most comfortable with because we're going all in for one season. For the $3 million difference, I would prefer to make sure other teams can't just poach him. I put the transition tag there just to give us some idea of what could possibly be possible. Like if we wanted to extend Bryce Huff on a long-term deal, maybe it makes sense to transition tag him, see what another team would offer him as a contract, and then we get the right of first refusal at that point. So you could try to gamble with that. If they wind up getting, or if he winds up getting poached by another team, it would kind of suck to lose him in a year you're going all in for a Super Bowl. So by not matching and losing him, I'm a little concerned with that. I'd rather pay the extra $3 million, get the franchise tag, and lock in a guy at least for next year, and then you can try to negotiate a longer-term deal if you want throughout the summer. I think the deadline is like second week of July or so, first week of July. So you have until then to restructure or negotiate that, and then you have next offseason to kind of reassess after a full season with him. As far as some options that we're going to have to do, the fifth-year options are very big coming up. You got Zach Wilson, who, look, let's face it, we're not accepting or activating that fifth-year option. We're going to decline that fifth-year option. It's $20.3 million. Zach has not played well. It's not worth having him on his fifth-year option. Elijah Vera Tucker, we are going to accept that fifth-year option. But it is a very expensive fifth-year option because he is an offensive lineman, not just a guard. So it's calculated a little bit differently. So $16.3 million. That's what's so rough when you consider trading 2 third-round picks to go up and get a guard in the first round. You're paying the price of a tackle when you have to exercise their fifth-year option. So I think the positional flexibility, even though it's at a premium price tag at 16.3, I think AVT has at least earned that with all the different positions we've asked him to play over the course of the last 2 years. And I don't particularly think that the the Achilles or the triceps injuries are reoccurring type injuries. I'm not as concerned with him as I was with Mekhi Becton the year before because it was a constant knee injury with Mekhi Becton. And there was also like some level of laziness, sluggishness, I guess, from Mekhi. So I don't see that with AVT. I think he's our most stout offensive lineman, and I want to just keep him around. If you wanted to try and renegotiate after the 2024 campaign and extend him further, you can drop that salary cap hit down by way of extension. Now, as far as Zach Wilson, it's a really interesting situation because you can have Zach Wilson cut immediately. I think that's where a lot of fans probably are. They want to just have the roster spot. We've tried the Zach experiment. It's not worth it anymore. But this is something that Aaron Rodgers said on the Pat McAfee show. He says on Wilson's benching, certain guys have to be the scapegoat, saying 10 other guys haven't been doing their job either. I feel for Zach. He still has a bright future in this league. So I could see a situation where as long as the Jets are bringing in a strong veteran backup and Zach is the third string guy, this may be something where the Jets feel all right having him as the third potential option. I think it's probably going to be a break and he's not going to be here, but we're just going to operate as if Zach's not actually factoring into any game plans for next year in any capacity. Best case scenario, he's quarterback 3. There's no cap savings. If you wind up cutting Zach Wilson, you're already paying his $11 million salary. So you're kind of footing the bill for someone else to potentially pick it up. I don't know. I could go either way on this. I'm kind of over the Zach experiment either way. Now, as far as free agency goes, this is exciting. We have to figure out how much cap space we have once we retain all our guys. So we're sitting at about $30 million. Pretty nice. Pretty nice number, considering where we started out prior to our cuts and everything. So $30 million. The first thing I want to take a look at, first thing, is wide receiver. We have to bring in some type of weapon, and there's a few guys that I would like to keep an eye on. The 3 in particular, obviously Davante Adams is one that we've been linked to consistently. But the other 2, Mike Evans, who was at training camp against the Jets at Florham Park with the Bucs this past year. So he's got some, familiarity with the facility and with the guys that are currently on our team. And then T. Higgins is another great option. He's a really young wide receiver compared to the other 2, but he is a tall, big-bodied wide receiver. And with Cincinnati having Jamar Chase up for a contract and a few other guys, you already paid Burrow. Can you really afford to keep T. Higgins as well? It's a lot to allocate towards the wide receiver position, but they still do have a good amount of cap space. So I could see T. Higgins being retained. Mike Evans is going to ask for a pretty penny. Now, as far as what their salaries could look like per spot track, they're saying T. Higgins would command about $16 million a year, but you're committing probably a 5-year contract to him. Mike Evans, they're saying $23.2 million. That's the highest here. Davante Adams, on the other hand, you would have to trade for, but his contract is already signed. So you're already sitting at a $17.5 million contract for Davante Adams if you make the move for him, but you're also sending an asset the Raiders' way as well. So as far as receiver, let's just quit beating around the bush and let's say it's going to be Davante Adams. We're going to figure out a way to get Davante here. For this exercise, I'm going to say we are giving them a 2025 conditional pick that is a second-round pick for Davante Adams, and if the Jets make the Super Bowl, it turns into a first-round pick. And that's, I think, the highest sort of pick that the Raiders are going to get for Davante Adams at this particular point in time. I think he's got a no-trade clause in there too, so he might be able to decide where he ultimately wants to go. He's on a 3-year, $91 million contract as it stands today. He's $17.5 million if he's traded to another team on the books for 2024, and then his next 2 years would be $36 and $37 million, but no money is guaranteed in those 2 seasons. So what I would like to do, I would offer him a new contract. I would offer him a 3-year, $60 million deal. That would drop his cap hit from $17.5 million this year. If you give him a $21 million signing bonus, you could make it a $9 million cap hit year one, a $15 million cap hit year two. Let's say we guarantee those first 2 years. So even if Rodgers decides to retire after the 2024 campaign, you have Davante Adams at least for one more season with whoever your quarterback's going to be. And then $23 million, who knows, maybe Rodgers continues to want to play. You at least have a pretty decent wide receiver, I shouldn't say pretty decent, a really good wide receiver under contract for 3 seasons, but you can cut him after that second year to save yourself a little bit of cap space. I think he would absolutely sign this deal. I really do. I think he wants to play with Aaron Rodgers again, and I think Rodgers wants to play with him. And you look at all the way these receivers were talking at the Jets-Raiders game, it seems like it's just a foregone conclusion. The Jets tried to trade for him this past offseason. They tried to trade for him at the deadline. There's reports that they're going to try and trade for him in the offseason. So rather than going all these different directions, we're just going to say Davante Adams ends up being a New York Jet, but I would be very, very excited with either one of Mike Evans or T. Higgins. I think they're both really good options as well. Now, as far as offensive line, you got to get offensive line figured out. We lost Wayne Brown. You lose Mekhi Becton. So you don't even have any tackles under contract except for Carter Warren and the Max Mitchell and sliding AVT around and things like that. So you got to take care of the offensive line. I'm going after the best one. That's Jonah Williams from Cincinnati. He had his 5th-year option declined by the Cincinnati Bengals. So I think he's going to feel a little bit of a way and want to come away from their team and go somewhere that he's wanted. He was originally playing left tackle. He's now moved to right tackle. He's been playing really well. He has played a ton of snaps over the course of his career. He got injured his first season, but has played, I think, almost 100% of the snaps since then. We're going to give him a 5-year, $74.7 million deal. That's according to what SpotTrack says his market value is. His signing bonus would be $25 million. His cap hit for year one, $7 million, then $11, $15, $19, $23 million. Now, I think Joe Douglas is definitely going to get this done. He has gone after the top offensive linemen each of the last 3 years. Joe Thuney, Jack Conklin, and Orlando Brown. We all offered the most money, but they decided to go where the quarterbacks were, obviously, with Patrick Mahomes, Burrow, and Watson at the time, or I guess at this particular time. So Jonah Williams, he's going to come to New York now that we have the quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, and we are protecting one part of the line with a guy for the next 5 years. So I'm on board with Jonah Williams here. Now, as far as backup quarterback goes, there's going to be a few different guys. And the way I would like to approach this is a quarterback that can be young enough to maybe give you some type of resurgence a la a Geno Smith or something along those lines. Jacoby Brissett, Baker Mayfield, and Gardner Minshew are 3 guys that I think you can get for relatively cheap. Like I'm talking $4 or $5 million a year or so. Baker signed for 1 year, $4 million down in Tampa, but he was also guaranteed a starting spot. So I don't know if he's willing to take a backup role to Rodgers necessarily, unless he wants to be here after Rodgers. Gardner Minshew might see his best shot of starting as being in Indianapolis, like behind Anthony Richardson. He's been injured a lot. He's obviously on injured reserve right now. So maybe he decides not to leave Indianapolis. So I have the Jets going in and getting Jacoby Brissett, 31 years old, 31 years old, 2-year contract, $12 million, $5 million signing bonus would be $3.5 million salary cap hit year one, $8.5 million salary cap hit year two. If you wanted to build some type of incentives into the deal where, let's say Rodgers retires after next year and Jacoby's the starter, maybe he gets an elevated pay or something along those lines. But I think this is the perfect type of quarterback to bring in for a Super Bowl run backup. This is a guy who's been through a ton of adversity, not only being traded from New England to Indianapolis, having the head coaching whirlwind over there, gets moved to Cleveland, winds up starting in place of Deshaun Watson. So he's this weird placeholder type of quarterback. And then he goes to Washington this past year. I really like Jacoby Brissett. I think he's going to be at least like a baseline average, like you're talking 16 to 22, probably somewhere in there as far as quarterback play goes. And I would be all right taking that from a leadership perspective and just a security blanket. So you got Rodgers, then Brissett, and then, whoever quarterback 3 is at that particular point. Now, as far as cap is concerned, the Jets are sitting around $10 million in salary cap space heading into the draft. Now, you do have to keep salary cap space to sign your draft picks. because the Jets don't have a second round pick and because you only pay the top 51 on your roster, and we have some, a sixth and 2 seventh round picks, some money that's not going to push the top 51 out, the Jets are only going to actually need about $4 million to sign their draft class this year. So we got a little bit of money for in-season moves as well. And like I said earlier, DJ Reed and Tyler Conklin could both be restructured for about $10.7 million. So there's still more money to go out and get additional players if you wanted to. I think a lot of guys at this point in time, I think we're at like 51 maybe players on the roster, plus draft picks, plus whatever undrafted free agents you bring in. So you might want to spend some of that money across the board here. As far as a mock draft goes, I'm excited. I am all sorts of excited for this. I love mock season, and this is where we're going to head off. So first overall, we go into the draft. It doesn't seem like the Jets are going to have a whole lot of wins. A lot of guys are projecting us to have a top 6 pick, most likely. So we're going into this draft. We're not taking a quarterback. It's not happening. I do not want this regime to draft a quarterback because we don't know if they're going to be fired at the end of this Rodgers experiment just 1 year later. So I don't want this young signal caller to be drafted really high and then have to find a head coach to fit that particular play caller, or maybe the offense, or maybe the coach we get doesn't like the signal caller we get. So more than likely, we're not going quarterback, at least early in this particular draft. So you go and you do what you should have done a while ago, and that's go out and get the best damn left tackle you can. Olu Fashanu, the left tackle from Penn State. He's 6'6", 321 pounds. He started in 2022 and 2023. His first start was actually in a bowl game in January of 2022, and then basically held on to it from there on out. He returned in 2023. He was draft eligible. He could have come out this past draft, but he wanted to go back for his degree, and they are calling this guy a blue chip prospect. He is just the anchor the Jets need. He can be our DeBrickashaw Ferguson for the next 10 years. I want our offensive bookends, right tackle, left tackle, taken care of. You got AVT coming back. You got Joe Tippmann. I love it. This is exactly where we should be heading. So build that block in front of Aaron Rodgers, that whole wall. Then you go into round 3, you get Zach Zinter, the interior offensive lineman from Michigan. Laken Tomlinson's going into the final year of his contract. You have Tippmann, who you eventually want to have at center at some point anyway, so you kind of need that extra interior offensive lineman at some point. 6'5", 322 pounds. He is a little bit of a security blanket, both for Tomlinson and for AVT, especially if like one of the tackles goes down and AVT's got to kick back out to tackle, then you have another guard that you can plug in. I think the interior part of our line, we cannot have what happened to us the last 2 years on the offensive line, so just load up. I don't care if we use every pick on offensive line. We're not going to do that, but I like it. He's got a high football IQ. He's strong durability too. He's always healthy. That was a key thing I wanted to look for in terms of offensive line play. Both Fashanu and Zinter are strong in that capacity. High football IQ, got honors in academics and leadership, I guess, is what his scouting profile said. So this guy seems like a legitimate, good dude all the way around to add to this New York Jets locker room for the next 4 years. Coming up, we don't have, so we didn't have a second round pick. So obviously went first round, third round. Now we're into the 4th round. We have 2 picks in the 4th round. I want to take wide receiver A.D. Mitchell out of Texas. Now, this guy is 6'4", 196 pounds. He transferred from Georgia and wanted to play with Ewers out in Texas. Now, I think it was 2 years ago he wound up transferring. This year is when he transferred. He missed 9 games in 2022 with Georgia with an ankle injury. And then after, not Stidham, Stetson Bennett. There's the name. Once he went to the NFL, he wanted to move on to another quarterback. He's got convincing double moves, high points the ball, good blocker, but needs to work on routes. So this guy's going to be a little bit more of a red zone target, a little bit more of a fly route kind of a guy, or maybe like a double move and just catch with a little back shoulder throw. But he's a different size profile than some of the guys we have. You bring in Devontae Adams, he's very similar to Garrett Wilson, so you don't have that 6'5" or 6'4" big bodied dude to go up and get a jump ball or maybe help you in the red zone, which is something we've struggled with this year. Though I think with Rodgers coming back, you will have a better red zone offense next year. So I like this receiver here. And now the second pick of the 4th round, we're keeping it on the offensive side. That's right, it's been way too long. We're taking Audric Estime, The running back from Notre Dame, he's a local kid, went to St. Joe's High School. He's 5'11", 233 pounds. This guy is a bruiser of a back. He had 1,055 all-purpose yards in 2022, and he had 1,245 yards, or at least he has that much right now as of recording this video, in 2023. 14 touchdowns this year, 12 touchdowns last year. Guy is a punishing runner. He's not a very elusive runner. Like, he's not going to be that Izzy or Brees type runner, but when you're on the goal line and you just need someone to bully, this is the guy you want to have. He's got a good size for a blocking back, like 233 pounds. He should be able to provide a little bit more stability than maybe a Michael Carter did as our third down back, but he needs to work on ball security. So you probably don't want to be relying on him as a bell cow or even a second string running back in that kind of capacity. He had 3 fumbles, I think, in the first 4 games of this past year. So definitely something he needs to work on, something to look at there. Now, we skip the 5th round. We don't have a 5th round pick, but we go into the 6th round. We're taking TJ Sanders, the defensive tackle from South Carolina. He's 6'5", 298 pounds. He is strong against the run. If you notice, I let Al Woods go during our free agent portion, so we need some big bodies in the middle of that defensive line that can help us in the run game. He's good at occupying double teams, which should free up some of our other defensive linemen. He's a high-effort player, is what his draft profile said. Wide frame, long arms, but susceptible to cut blocks, which I guess if you're that size and someone's going at your legs, you're probably susceptible to cut blocks anyway, so I don't know how exclusive this is to him. But I like this. I like bringing in someone that can replace Al Woods because you don't want to get run on if you're the New York Jets. 7th round comes around. We're looking in the secondary. Sheridan Jones, the cornerback from Clemson. He's 6 foot tall, 190 pounds. He is seen as an outside zone corner. He tracks the ball well downfield, has good recovery speed, and he hits wide receivers at the line of scrimmage. He's not afraid to be physical at the point of, I guess, initial coverage, but he's not very physical in terms of tackling. So when he's crashing down to try and stop a running back, he's probably not your best guy in that respect, but this could be a possible replacement for Bryce Hall because I let him walk in free agency. And then to round out our 7th round, you're looking at Deshaun Pace out of Cincinnati. So someone that played with Sauce Gardner over there. 6'2", 212 pounds. He is a man zone box strong safety. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but dude was clocked at 21.2 miles an hour. That is blazing fast for someone at 6'2". Strong in coverage, violent tackler. Doesn't that sound a little bit like Quincy Williams? I love hearing violence. And then they say he has the ability to separate the ball from the runner, from the receiver. This guy is a hitter. I like this. I like this a lot. I think you got to get a little physical on the back end, and we don't prioritize safety too much, so I don't think it's going to be something that we see a lot of over the course of, I don't know. It's not going to be something that we see Douglas or Saleh put a lot of emphasis on. Ashton Davis was the highest investment we've ever spent on a safety. So I think based on where our secondary is right now and our defense overall, you're not going to put premium assets into it when you're trying to go all in and win. Now, as far as our roster, how do you think I did? Let me know what you guys think of this. I feel like I've solved a few really big problems for our New York Jets. Let me go back to here. And let's look at our goals from the beginning. We needed to fix the offensive line. I got us a brand new left tackle in the draft. I got us a brand new right tackle. So we're locked in for 5 years on either side. You got AVT coming back. We exercise his 5th-year option. You got Tittman. That's eventually going to be our center. You have Laken Tomlinson this year, but you got someone sitting in the hopper in Zach Zinter from Michigan. So offensive line-wise, we should be all set. We got a high-end wide receiver number 2. Could you imagine Devontae Adams or Garrett Wilson? Whichever one you want to say is our wide receiver 2. Those two are going to absolutely ball out, and it's only going to help this team in the future. And then as far as a backup quarterback, we brought in Jacoby Brissett and declined Zach's 5th-year option. I think we're going to cut Zach, but maybe there's some sort of weird situation where Rodgers likes keeping him around his baby brother on the practice squad. He's got some high upside, but I don't think his time in New York should really continue on. I think it's probably best that both sides move on at this particular point in time. And then it's a balance of all in right now because it plugs a bunch of holes that we've had or needed to fill for this year in particular, but going into next year, but also sets us up for the future. Now, remember, I got us signing Brissett to a 2-year contract. So let's say the worst case scenario happens with Aaron Rodgers and he goes down with a career-ending injury or the season goes to shit and he decides, I'm done, I'm retiring after 2024. At the very least, you have Jacoby Brissett under contract, who has dealt with a ton of turmoil and a ton of weird situations throughout the NFL. Going into his second year, he's going to be in a contract year that could maybe elevate his level of play. If Rodgers doesn't work out, I would imagine Douglas and Saleh are all gone. So you got a new coaching staff coming in. And since we did not invest a quarterback draft pick, the new regime will have those assets to use towards a quarterback when they come in. So you're not throwing a rookie to the fire with Brissett being there. So there's not this high expectation the way you had with Zach and with Darnold and with Sanchez and all these different guys. Like you're actually grooming a quarterback the correct way. And in the best case scenario, Aaron Rodgers returns. Aaron Rodgers returns. Douglas and Saleh keep on clicking, and you have Brissett as your backup for Super Bowl run, potentially number 2 in 2025. You have Devontae Adams under contract, and then you also have the ability, I think at that point, if it does well with Aaron Rodgers next year, I think I would allow Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh to then make the selection of a quarterback in 2025. I would feel a lot more comfortable at that point in time. And then you have a strong offensive line in front of this young kid with a plethora of young weapons. So I think I did a pretty bang up job, if I do say so myself. Let me know what your thoughts are down below in the comment section. What did I screw up? What do you think you could have done better? Where would you like to see the Jets go overall? Let me know in the comment section down below. And as always, go Jets.